and welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Normand, your host. We're going to spend a little time close to shore here, right in southeastern Michigan, and specifically Grosse Pointe. We're going to spend a little bit of time talking with the Everinghams, both Ted and Marcia, who are lifelong sail administrators and race officials. Ted was recently awarded the highest honor you can get from U.S. Sailing for his participation and a lifetime achievement within the sport. We're also going to get a chance to the best of the officials in the Everingham house, and that's the wife, Marcia. And she's going to talk a little bit about her career as a PRO in and around both national, regional, and certainly international events. So it was a really fun conversation. Got a chance to talk to them at Bayview Yacht Club in the Commodore's room overlooking the Detroit River. So I think you'll enjoy that conversation. If that's not enough, then we're also going to spend some time all the way down in Fort Pierce, Florida. Got a chance to talk to our great looper, Nagui. Matta is going to talk to us about leaving the Panhandle, and now he's over in Fort Pierce. He took a journey across to Florida to the river and lock systems. I think you'll find some of the videos that he's provided with us and some of the conversation. We talked a little bit about a lot of things. One of the things you should know, the interview goes off the rails a little bit because Nagui and I are friends and we have some fun. So if you see there's some sarcasm in there, kind of disregard it. It's just he and I having some fun with each other and having spent some time together sailing. So he's a terrific guy, and we hopefully you'll enjoy the interview. So up next is the Everinghams, and we'll talk to Ted about that great U.S. Sailing Award. We'll be back in a second. Welcome back. We're talking with Ted Everingham, and we're talking here at Bayview Yacht Club for the show. Ted has just won the Harmon Hawkins Trophy, which is awarded annually to an individual who's made outstanding contributions to the sport of sailing in the field of race administration, which is judging, umpiring, race management, classification, racing rules, and a variety of other things. This is a huge U.S. Sailing Award. And first of all, congratulations, and we appreciate you taking the time to talk to us.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure. I was pretty active in U.S. Sailing in the Judges Committee at the time this award was created. And I know the thought that went into it, and I knew Harmon Hawkins. And I can tell you, it never occurred to me that I might even be considered to win this award along the way. It's kind of a lifetime achievement award. When I got the call about a couple months before I got the trophy, the woman who called me, whom I knew well, and she was involved when we created the trophy as well, said, "I'm calling to tell you you're going to receive the Harmon Hawkins Trophy in February." Silence on the phone from my end. And she said, Ted, are you still there? I couldn't talk. So it was very exciting, very exciting.
What does it mean? I mean, obviously it makes you feel good, or you're happy, all the rest of it, but you got to be a little surprised. Because when I saw this on the list, I was really surprised.
I was surprised. I was very much surprised. I'm still kind of surprised.
Okay.
You know, it all started in this room. You mentioned we're in the Commodore's room at Bayview, and it's where the Commodore's room was in the old clubhouse. And I was leaving a meeting here 35 years ago one night. I wasn't a member of Bayview at the time. We were walking out, and I turned to Commodore Mike Tapper. He was Commodore here in, I think, 1961, dentist. He was the guy in this sport, in this community, for years. And I said, "Commodore, I've heard a couple protests. I kind of like that. I'd like to get certified someday by United States Sailing, but I need some experience to do that. How can we make that happen?" That's the last time we had that conversation. He began introducing me to people. I got opportunities to judge and then to umpire, and did some race management, not as well as my wife, but pretty good. Taught those three disciplines for U.S. Sailing for 35 years. And I just recently retired from actively judging because it was time. And so it was a big thrill. It was a big thrill, and thank you for the recognition.
Talk about the significance of the starting cannon. Mm-hmm. I feel that's the top of the trophy. This is a traveling trophy because there's a number of names on it. So you got, I'm assuming, to get to have it for a year here at Bayview.
Right.
And then it moves on to whoever becomes next year's winner.
Right.
How old is this award? 2011, does that sound right?
No, 2005.
2005.
First winner was 2006. Was Ron Ward, a friend of mine, now gone. He was a mentor of mine from Annapolis, Maryland, and just a great guy. Just to think that my name is on the same trophy as Ron Ward's, in and of itself, huge honor.
Yeah.
Huge honor.
I don't think you see too many starting guns like this at sail races anymore, but this is what you might have saw in an old.
It wouldn't have been this pretty, but yes, I remember well the starting cannons that we used around here. And then we went to air horns and other automated systems, as you know. But this is symbolic of how we started sailboat races going back to England, you know.
Yeah. Do we appreciate in the sail world PROs and sail management as much as we should? And I say that because the age of our sail racing committees in a lot of places is aging. And I don't know that a lot of people want to jump into what I think is a pretty thankless job.
I think people who do those things are appreciated by the competitors. The difficulty is getting the competitor to give up competing to help competitors by running races, by judging, by umpiring, and all these other things. That's the hard part.
Ted, the thing that hits me, and one of the sort of threads throughout all of our shows, the uniqueness of sailing is that if you're a high school, any sport, you pretty much, if you're 1%, you go to college. If not, you end up being a coach if that's what you want to stay in. You can be a competitive sailor at 50, 60 years old. We had a couple local guys last year. Paul Nectarline won a Cal 25 national championship at the age, I think Paul's 69, 67, somewhere in that ballpark. That changes the rules, which means a lot of guys don't want to get off the boat to sit on the dock to be able to have to write down times.
You're right. That's exactly right. Now, I got into judging in part because I said someday, being on the water all day and bouncing around in all sorts of weather could be something I can't do anymore, but I love this sport and I want to be part of it. And as years went by, I was sailing less, judging more, and that's just fine. But that's me, and I worry about the fact that it's hard to get younger people into judging, umpiring, running races. It's hard. It's hard. But I think they are appreciated.
Inside your head, away from all of the accolades, this really has to mean something in a big way for all that you've done for sailing.
I'd be lying if I said anything but yes.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm thrilled to the bone about this. As I said, I never dreamed that I would be even on the short list for this award, and now my name is on this trophy. It means a lot.
Do you know who nominated you?
Yes.
Who?
Kirk Brown.
Okay.
Kirk is a sailor, an umpire, a judge from Long Beach, California. Belongs to Long Beach Yacht Club. Very active in the Congressional Cup out there. I met him working on an event in San Francisco a number of years ago. Kirk is like a brother to me, and he knew about, we talked frequently. He knew I was retiring from judging, and he was there. He gave me a gold whistle when I retired from umpiring several years ago. And so this was a complete surprise. I knew nothing about it until I got that phone call.
We had a chance to interview Alan Osfield, who is the new CEO of U.S. Sailing, who was a part of the award dinners that you were all involved
Yes.
in several weeks ago.
Yep.
I got a chance to read the last couple paragraphs of what your nominee talked about, and they talked more about your heart. They thought you were intelligent and all the rest of it, but you kind of won this award because of the size of your heart. I thought that was really a nice testament to you.
That means a lot to me. It's one thing to do the things I've done. It's people who realize why I did it, why I respect those who do it, and how grateful I am to those who gave me a little boost along the way to get me there.
Well, congratulations. Certainly well deserved, and have what hopefully will be a great summer.
Thank you.
I wanted to thank Ted for spending a couple seconds with us talking about his award and his honor from U.S. Sailing, and something that was well deserved. Up next is his wife, Marcia, talking a little bit about being a PRO. We also wanted to mention that Lynn Kotwicki, former Commodore at Bayview, wanted to mention that the Women on Water event is coming up in August, and it's something you should check out. I think we did a show last year on it, and it was really fun talking to the women who were involved in the program. And if you have any interest in sailing with your own gender, check it out on Bayview's website, and hopefully that'll be fun. Up next is Marcia, and we'll be back in a second.
Well, today we get a chance to talk to the better half of the Everinghams. I got the name right. We'll start with that. Talking with Marcia Everingham, and Marcia's a longtime PRO, And Marcia, just for those folks that don't know, including me, because I'll screw it up, sure as heck. PRO stands for?
Principal Race Officer.
Okay. One of the most distinguished PROs in the nation. You've been around a long time. You did it for over 25 years.
Well, I'm honored to think that people think that, but I just was kind of doing a job I loved.
Well, I talked to some folks in different parts of the country who know you, and it is, in fact, you're renowned. People know you, and what's interesting, we are going to run this interview in conjunction with our interview with Ted, and part of that discussion is that you were fair. That's the one word that everybody used about you, which, you know, you can't get much greater accolade in terms of being an official and officiating something than being fair.
No.
So they all said the same thing. If there was a person to go to come up with those kind of answers. So let's start with the very simplest of questions. How did you start it, and why?
Well, my husband and I, excuse me, had sailed together ourselves. We sailed a smallish boat in the area. It wasn't terribly respected by the bigger boat sailors around, but it was a good class to be in. And we sailed about 15 years out on Lake St. Clair and on what was called the Sea Course at the time, which was the small boat race course. And the good thing about it was we learned to do it together. Basically, one week he would be the skipper of the race, and the next week I would be the skipper of the race. So all summer long, we had experience out on that water. Then he decided he was a little more interested in other things. Big boats were his next project. And in those days, women didn't really sail on sailboats unless they were the wife or the daughter of the owner. It just wasn't something that happened very much.
This was the early 1800s.
Yeah, well, you would think so, but no, not really.
Okay.
But so consequently, I think I also have to be honest and say I didn't really want to be just a person hanging on to those ropes out there because I had already had experience being a boss every other week.
Right. No, that makes sense.
So I looked around and I thought, well, if I get involved in race management, then I'll still be a part of the sport. I'll kind of give back to what I enjoyed for 15-ish years. And so I was able to get on a race management team that actually did the Sea Course, where I had done all my racing. And I kind of moved up as I went along.
Is it fair to say that sailing is a family obsession? Was a family obsession?
Well, at least with two of us. We have 3 children, and they all had sailing experiences as children, but only the youngest one is really taken to the sport. The others can do it. My daughter really didn't like to do it, and our youngest son is an excellent sailor in the community.
All right, so let me take you back. What are some of the things you have to learn up front as a PRO? What do you have to be good at? I'm assuming math has to be one of those things.
Well, not really. The principal race officer is the person who puts a team together to work on the water. Usually the team will consist of about 6 to 8 people on the starting boat, and then we have a couple of people at various marks that have to be put in the water. And so the principal race officer is the person really who is responsible for all decisions made in running those races. And I knew them from top to bottom, basically. There are always new things to learn because there are new rules written. But I've had a pretty good mentor myself in a gentleman who'd sailed for many years, and he kind of came back to the sport to start doing race management. And then he got ill, And I was in the position then to take over his job, but he would come out with us just to enjoy the day. His health wasn't good enough that he could take all the time and make decisions and that sort of thing. But he would ask me questions after we got all the boats started. Things like, okay, what do you do next? And so I had to answer it. And so it taught me that you have to think ahead. Somebody phrased it one time as get your head out of the boat,
Right.
See what's going on around you. And I think it's just that I was a good team leader.
Right. But what a great coaching technique, making you
Oh, yeah.
repeat back to you so you could at least explain it
Right,
extemporaneously so you'd understand it. If you can't explain it, there's no way you're going to understand it.
right.
I think that's terrific. What's the hardest job about being a PRO?
Well, I don't think people really understand what it takes to put on a sailboat race from start to finish. There are lots of little jobs, things people think of are things like the social events. The principal race officer really doesn't deal with that at all. It's a person who's usually assigned by the regatta chairman, and their only purpose there is really to put on the race or races if there are more than one, if it's a real regatta, several days. And it takes a lot of time to put your team together. It takes a lot of time to get your equipment together. You are usually the person who writes the first draft of the sailing instructions, and then other people look it over and decide if it needs to be changed here or there. And then you have to, when the race is over, you have to put all that stuff away. And you don't find quite as much help standing around to do that. So it takes, to put on even a one-day race, it takes a good couple weeks of organization and getting it done.
I'm curious, are PROs also part of the, I don't know what I want to say. I'll have to cut this. Let me say this again. Are PROs also part of the protest committee?
No.
Okay.
We may,
Separate issues.
Separate, yes. We may have to decide things like whether or not we're going to protest a sailor ourselves. There are rules about that, so sometimes you can and sometimes you should. And sometimes we have to be a witness in the protest. So we take jobs like that, but as far as being just a regular judge, I'm not that.
Rules generally come from safety, and the farther down you go, the safer the rules become. And the example to this would be there are 12 to 15 major rule changes between professional football and college that are different, and between college and high school there's another 10. A lot of guys who watch high school sports, because their kids play, will think that there's some kind of an NFL rule because they watch on Sunday that doesn't apply at the high school level. The rules in sailing change an awful lot, and lately, and I'm asking the question because we've just switched from Lake St. Clair to Lake Michigan for our PHRF, did the rules, in your experience, change quite a bit? And then the follow-up question is, are the guys racing, maybe not the highest levels, but for the most part, the guys who race, do they know the rules?
That's a kind of yes and no.
Okay.
The rules are actually printed up every 4 years,
Okay.
based on the Olympics.
Oh, I did not know that.
And they change, and this is something that's done at U.S. Sailing gets involved,
Right.
but it's because it's World Sailing makes all the rules.
Okay.
And then they all these countries and everybody else agrees on the wording and what's going to happen and what are the rules. They don't change drastically every 4 years. They're usually sort of minor changes or defining something a little better so people can understand it better. I found that there was a huge change after umpiring got popular for match racing. And so the match racing rules are a little different in some ways. The basics are all the same, but how you play the game is a little bit different.
As a PRO, do you require yourself then, obviously every 4 years or even annually, to make sure you brush up on the rules and understand what it is that's being done?
No, we have a program at U.S. Sailing where we teach people how to be race officers.
Okay.
And frankly, I was in charge of the committee that did that the first time.
Okay.
That my mandate from the board had been to get this program up and running. I knew better than to think I could do it, but I knew some people I knew could do it. So we got it going. That they still use the same basic teaching program now, and so you're constantly bringing in new rules and things you have to update your program.
Is there a sport, I'm not sure there is one, I'm asking as a PRO, is there a sport with more specific words for specific things? The lexicon of words that go with sailing, I think of the acronyms on themselves. You could be, if you're an English teacher, you'd love sailing because there's acronyms for everything. And then PHRF is perf, and if you don't understand the lexicon, that's part of that. So I'm guessing if you go to some kind of a pre-meeting for a race, you sound like you're being Vulcan. So part of being, so my question is, being a part of a PRO, for those who don't know, like you said, yes and no, is that not also part of the educational experience of explaining them to what it is so they understand it?
Well, it's more the language that's used really a lot of it came from the old original sailing days.
Right.
And you just, as you go along, you kind of pick up the language. But nobody sits down and actually teaches you that. We taught for some years in this small boat sailing class. We had taken an adult class ourselves, and we then moved up and we're actually teaching the sailing classes. It was all done by volunteers. And I found that the most interesting thing about teaching other people how to sail and what the language was and that sort of thing was I learned a lot more than I had before, because again, I had to answer those questions when people would ask them.
Temperament of sailors. And I'm sure they're obviously going to be a certain level of folks that are going to be contentious about. Did you find that in sort of this area, it was always the same kind of guys? And my point to that is it's always the same little league parent from this particular team or that particular team. You can almost count on it when you walk on the field because you had 7 other encounters with them. Is that pretty typical with sailing too?
Well, a lot. I think that the thing that's most amazing about sailors is they're so competitive. I have had some of the nicest people I know yelling at me, either as a racer or as a race officer.
What's your response back to them?
Usually I say, we'll take care of that.
So you're really good at diffusing things.
I hope so.
Okay. Well, you have to be able to do that. The joke is that every referee, you never want to mess with a referee, much like you never want to mess with a comedian on stage. They have a variety of comebacks that you're just not going to be able to, to stay with.
Right.
What's the most rewarding part of it for you?
Well, I think it was the fact that I loved the sport so much. And I was happy and felt good that I felt I was giving back on a high level. I will be quite honest and say, thank you. I think I know I was a really good race officer. but I was that because I enjoyed the sport so much.
And I guess my last question, what do you love about sailing so much?
A certain freedom. When you're out there sailing a boat, you are in charge, but you know that the person who's really in charge is the weather, God, whatever you
Right.
whatever you want to call some higher power. So you never know what's going to happen.
I've never asked this question, but it just hit me as I'm speaking. You talk about freedom. You go out as a family. It became a family activity. Can you find freedom on a boat with 3 kids and a husband? Is there this? It's different at home. It's different in the street. It's different taking them to school. But could you find that freedom as a mother on that boat out sailing on a Saturday afternoon?
Yes.
That's remarkable.
Because to me, part of that freedom is being with them.
Right. That's remarkable. Well, I appreciate the time you've talked with us. I just wanted to mention that of the 6 or 7 people we just had a chance to chat about, we did an informal, unscientific survey, and come to find out in your household, between you and your husband, you were a much better official. So thank you very much for speaking with us.
All right, I enjoyed it. Thank you.
It was really fun talking to the Everinghams, a little bit about their background as race administrators. And they're just a really fun couple. I had a chance to spend about an hour with them recently at Bayview, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate their dedication to the sport and, being very nice to us in the program. So thank you. If you get a chance to see either one of them, give them a pat on the back for all that they've meant to sailing. And they're just a really fun couple to be around. The other thing we wanted to mention is that the Detroit Community Sailing Center is extending their registration for Adult Learn to Sail, as well as their junior sailing program, which kind of brings me to the point that a lot of it, from Crescent to Grosse Pointe Yacht Club to Bayview, everybody's registering for junior sailors right now. And that's something you certainly want to get a chance to jump on board, check out those websites. And if you're an adult, you want to learn to sail, the Detroit Sailing Club Challenge the Wind program is second to none. Grace Pytel runs a great program over there, and it's fun and enjoyable. I think they're still looking for instructors, so check out their website, and if you can give them a hand, then that would be cool. Up next is our favorite wanderer on the Great Loop, Nagui Matta, and we'll get back to him in just a second.
Hi, welcome back. We're talking with our great happy wanderer on the Great Loop, Nagui Matta. Nagui is over in Fort Pierce, over on the Atlantic side of the ocean, and you kind of made the travel. You're going to have this discussion, but we're interviewing you from outside. There's no ice on Lake St. Clair. This is the balcony from Crescent. I've got a jacket on because it's about 30 degrees here, and I have no idea how warm it is there, but welcome, and hope you've had a good last 3 or 4 weeks.
It's been great. It's for the record, it's 75 this afternoon and sunny and beautiful. Awesome day here.
That's good to know. That's really appreciated. I'm sitting here in this coat, freezing, but we just wanted to get outside and get better light from the process. So let's make it really simple. I want to talk about a couple things. Talk a little bit about the travels from what essentially is the Gulf across, because you obviously went through the Kalahari and went through that way. So talk about that. And then I want to talk a little bit about food and just kind of what goes on with eating and preparation and the rest of it. So you left what essentially was Pensacola about 4 weeks ago, right?
I left Pensacola. It was about five weeks ago exactly, actually, and went down the coast, jumped around ended up in Carabel, and from Carabel I crossed to a place called Steenhatchee, and down the west side of Florida. Beautiful. The west coast of Florida is just awesome. A couple of nice towns, and I crossed through Lake Okeechobee, and here I am.
I think the last time we talked to you, you were in Steenhatchee.
Steenhatchee. Yeah, that's the one with the glass bottom canoe.
My French American Indian pronunciations is a little lacking. So
there's a few other names like Caloosahatchee.
No, I get that part. So we were talking about the fact you were going to go across the lake, much like we talked about coming through upper part of Michigan. So let's start with that. Was it all that you expected?
It was very interesting. And that was first I passed by Fort Myers, and it was really sad to see the devastation from Ian, the hurricane.
Yeah, man.
There was boats still in the water, and there was like boats. A lot of it was pretty bad. And I didn't even go by the worst part. The worst part is apparently Fort Myers Beach,
Yeah.
and but just Fort Myers and Yacht Basin there was pretty devastating. Then I visited a couple of friends, and their subdivision was also devastated, and also stopped in Sanibel and or Captiva, I should say, Captiva and Boca Grande, and it's really sad to see all the devastation.
At the I guess would be the western end of Captiva. There used to be a really nice plantation, hotel plantation, golf course, and the whole deal.
Yeah.
Were you anywhere near that?
I was in the middle of Captiva, a place called Twin Waters,
Okay.
and it's a resort, had a marina in it, and but had a restaurant and a hotel, and the hotel was partially open. There was some guests there, but not every place was open, and there was some buildings that were still shut down.
This may be a redundant question, but is Captiva and Sanibel open? Is the causeway across now open?
Yes, it is. It
Okay.
is. I believe they rebuilt that or put some temporary causeway. But yeah, there was traffic coming in, and like I said, every other building there was some sort of construction restoration going on.
That
It
was
yeah,
I think that was the brunt of that hurricane from everything
yes,
we
it
saw.
was.
It
Yes.
was because it sits out probably, I'm guessing, about 5 or 6 miles off of the mainland, give or take.
Yeah, it's out a ways. The other place that I stopped that had a lot of damage also was Boca Grande. I had a friend that lives there, and he lost his house completely.
Wow.
It was and he's living in a temporary place, and it was and Boca Grande is a very interesting place. It's the land of the rich and famous. There's a lot of celebrities that have places there. I think everybody from Nick Saban has a place there. Um, Tucker Carlson has a place there. So there's a lot of celebrities that live there, but also there's sections of the island where there's like, for lack of a better word, trailer homes. So it's really a nice mix, kind of very eclectic place.
Yeah.
But again, it was devastated. There was lots of damage.
Okay. Oh, did you get into Fort Myers at all? The city of?
No, I just passed it right by because a lot of the marinas were not available. Legacy Marina and Legacy Harbor, and forget the other one is called Burnt Store or something like that. And
Okay.
they're all shut down. Yeah,
Weather
there's
was
still in the water.
up until you entered the waterway and the causeway. Was the weather pretty good for the most part coming down?
It was. I had a little bit of a nasty blow crossing Tampa Bay, but again, Boundless did great. It's a stout little boat, and it has a flat bottom, Greg, so it doesn't like beam seas very much, and tends to roll a lot in a beam sea.
Right.
But it was okay. There was no danger or any time, but it was a little rough.
Is there in your mind as you're driving, you're going to go and travel today? Is there a mile per hour rating that you kind of say, well, no, we're not going to go past that number? Do you have a safe point?
You mean like speed?
Yeah, in terms of how if the wind is wherever it might be.
Yeah,
Is it
yeah.
20 knots? Is it 30 knots? What is it that gives you caution not to go?
Oh, there's a wind speed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've sailed in 15 to 18, and that gets a little, especially if it's open water. In the intercoastal, 15 to 18 is nothing. You know, it's pretty easy. But if you get across a large bay like Tampa Bay and it blows 18 miles an hour, yeah, it has a chance. The fetch, the seaway builds a little bit. You get a lot of waves.
Okay. So you go in at Fort Myers in the Calahachie, you go in that direction. And
Yep.
obviously you're headed east at that point. Are there a lot of locks down through that?
There's 5 locks, and it's a little different rule than the inland rivers locks. They require you to have 2 lines on the boat. The inland rivers, you just basically just throw a line on the bollard, but in the Florida, for some reason, they require it to have 2 lines. And the interesting things, in fact, I have a video of that. I should send it to you. The interesting things is the way they fill and empty the lock. What they do is they open the gate to either let water in or dump water out. And whereas the big locks on the rivers, on the Illinois and the Mississippi, they have valves that come from underneath the lock and fill it from underneath. The problem is when they open up the gate to let water in, guess what? It creates a lot of turbulence in the lock.
Oh,
And
okay.
so it was a little actually tougher than the inland, even though it was very short drops. It was a little tougher to handle the boat because of the water rushing in through the gate.
Okay. You get a chance to go by we talked a little bit about the Edison and Ford places. Are they visible from the water?
They are, but I just went by right through there. I didn't, stop or yeah.
How
Um,
crowded is that causeway at this point, knowing that there's not a lot of boat traffic with all those boats laid up from the hurricane?
there's still a lot of boat traffic. In fact,
Okay.
I got waked pretty good by little boats going in and out. That kind of like, especially if you're through there on a weekend, people still want to take their boats out and enjoy the weather
Now, are the locks privately owned and you have to pay for them, or is that something that's either owned by the state or the federal government?
it's all owned by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay.
And
Well,
it's
there's no
staffed by
cost.
that's all the inland rivers are, all the Florida locks are, and yeah, and they're free.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, my point is you get an appreciation for your tax dollars at work. There's a good example that there are some things that we do get that isn't bad, right?
exactly. And in Florida, there's absolutely very little commercial traffic, unlike the Illinois and the Mississippi. So, pleasure boaters like me, it hardly had to wait. You just pull up, they open the lock, you pull in, and gone your way. Whereas I had to wait at least several hours in some of the locks on the rivers.
The reason my head bounced there for a second, the wind caught the front of the computer, thought it was going to tumble. So I got my thumbs on it to make sure it doesn't go anywhere. Is that up and down that river? Is it clean? Lots of houses. I'm assuming a lot of people live along the river as well, right?
Yeah, and there was some really nice houses. That part of Florida, and again, I took some pictures. I'll have to send you some pictures and video. But there was some houses that were really very upscale on that river, on that Calahoochee or Caloosahatchee. That's what it is.
Caloosahatchee. Yep.
Caloosahatchee.
We got
And there was
to
also
get some
some-
kind of we got to get some kind of a Seminole dictionary, English to Seminole dictionary that we can read of some sort. That's anyway.
Surprisingly, also there was some old Florida ranches on the inland waterway there, between crossing Florida by Okeechobee.
Yep.
There was horses. I saw some cattle, and it was just kind of a different perspective. But yeah,
We used to, when I lived down there, we would go up into the Ocala area. I worked for the Naples Daily News, and we'd go up in the Ocala area and see these, what you think you're in Kentucky. I mean, it's the most beautiful horse ranches with this beautiful backdrop and hilly, and Florida's a lot more diverse than you think it is.
that's one thing that I've, I really haven't been to a lot of the typical towns of Florida that you can characterize, and this is stereotype Florida. Places like Gulfport, places
Right.
like Venice, places like Sarasota, they all have a different feel and different kind of flavor. And I think they do that very, very nicely. They create their own identity, so to speak.
So from West Coast to East Coast, coming all the way through, how long did it take you?
Oh, it took me about 4 days. And again, I stopped at Indian Town, a little marina just before I hit the East Coast,
Okay.
and I spent a couple of days there.
Do you regret not taking the southern route back through Key West and coming back up and through Miami, or are you happy what you did?
I'm happy with what I did. There's a lot of boaters that I actually traveled with that are doing that. They're in Marathon right now, and some are in the Everglades City, and so I've been down there before, and kind of like, okay, let's plan that for the next loop. How's that sound?
When you get your members only Great Loop jacket, is your emblem a little smaller than those who've gone south and north from where you are?
Nope, it's the same flag. Remember, you just got to start and end up in the same place. That's
Okay.
it.
Okay. So from the river to where you are at Fort Pierce, how far are we talking distance wise?
Oh, it was probably around 45 miles. Yeah.
Fort Pierce, we talked briefly before we got on the call. Fort Pierce is known for golf courses in a lot of areas. I know the TPC is up in that direction. So is boating as big in that area in terms of sort of northeast Florida as it might be in the other parts of the state?
Oh, it's huge here.
Okay.
I saw a lot of boats here, a lot of and there's some big yachts. I was talking yesterday to a couple. They are cruising on their 80-foot boat. Okay, and they're both 75 years old, and it's both it's mammoth. If you get a chance, I'll zoom the camera and point and show you the boat. But it's huge, and this couple just kind of they do their thing, go slow, and that boat's been everywhere from Alaska to the Caribbean. So yeah,
I had a similar experience. We were on an 82-foot Dufour, brand new,
yeah.
and then I woke up from my nap, so we didn't get a chance to take care of the rest of it. Yeah, great. What I want to just briefly talk about, and this is a subject we haven't talked about. How often do you shop? How often do you eat out? And what you're carrying mostly canned stuff, or do you get a chance to get a good fair amount of fresh food?
Oh no. I could count the number of meals I had from canned stuff maybe on one hand in 6 months. So no, I don't. And again, it's personal preference. If that's what you like, you could do that. I know people who do that. It's convenient, it's easy. But no, I like to go shop and stock up. They had a farmer's market and here a couple of days ago, and I went stocked up. And so in Michigan, when I was doing Michigan, that was really nice because every town I stopped, there was a farmer's market there on the west coast of Michigan. They're far fewer in Florida, but it was awesome. And there's typically grocery runs. I make one. My challenge is because I don't have a lot of storage room. My fridge is pretty small, and I don't have a big enough freezer. The only thing I can keep in my freezer is the ice cream, basically. So I can't. So I got to shop often. I got to go to the store often. Just about any stop I make, if there's a Publix close by, I'll make a run for it.
Does dinner become, or breakfast or lunch? You're basically boating. When I
Yeah.
come home from work, I grab something to eat. I'm off to something else. You have more time to spend. Does meal time become a little more sacred because the time you want to spend to make sure you have good food, or is it treated like you were at home if you're still living in town here?
No, it's pretty much the same as I'm living at home. It doesn't take extra time, and again, you make a lot of compromises because the limited. I only have one burner stove, for example.
Okay.
So you can't cook elaborate meals, but you know what? I keep saying this, but I'll have to send you some pictures of some of the food I make because to me that's important. I'm willing to sacrifice a lot on space and creature comforts. When it comes to food and wine and coffee,
The best.
you go at it.
You mentioned briefly there was a sport. I'm trying to think. There was a rod of some sort with a hook on the end. I think it was fishing, I think, is the name of the sport. So
Yes.
Have you been fishing? Because I see what I think is a fishing rod up behind you there, up in the corner, hanging.
Well, the fishing rod is sitting outside in the rod holder.
Okay,
That's
so I'm
my
not.
boat
What is it above your head there, behind your back?
that's my boat hook. I had that on my
Oh, okay. Well,
and it was a
okay.
highly varnished boat hook. It's a beauty. I'll have to take a close up of it for you.
so you don't jump in the water with a knife in your teeth and then go after the fish that way. Is that correct? You've actually fished, right? Okay.
So
I'm being silly.
at the last video session, last interview, I was in Steenhatchee and I broke down and bought a fishing pole.
Right.
Ask me how many times I've used it so far.
I would say once.
Not once yet.
Zero.
It still has the wrapping paper and I still got to take the lures out. I need to get a license in Florida, a fishing license. And they have a lot of rules in Florida, catch limits and things like that. And they're different for different fish. So not that I'm going to keep any fish I catch, but
No, and for those guys watching, you and I have a friendship. We've had a friendship for a while. So sometimes we sort of wander off into silly land with part of these conversations. I was going to make a crack about pleasure boating when it in fact is stink boating, because you're a sailor, not necessarily a pleasure boater. But we'll pass on that one and just explain it and kind of keep moving forward. Are the prices of food, have you noticed, from Michigan all the way down and back around to Fort Pierce, is it consistent or is it really different depending on where you go?
well, I think it's more expensive here. Well, what I don't know, it's more expensive now. I don't know if it's because it's Florida or because in the last 6 months prices have gone up on a lot of stuff. So, but it's definitely my grocery bill is noticeably more than when I started.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, listen, my computer tells me that I'm almost out of battery, so I got to be able to render this to be able to get it on the air. So we will catch up with you hopefully a little bit up the Atlantic seaboard in the next 3 or 4 times out. And be safe as always. And we appreciate talking to you.
I appreciate it. And again, if your viewers have any questions, just let me know and we'll take care of that.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Greg.
I want to thank Nagui for taking the time to send us some videos and kind of looking through the locks. And it's been really fun keeping up with his travels. And so hopefully he'll be safe, and we'll catch up with him. Hopefully by the time we talk to him next, he probably should be up in the northern part of Georgia. So hopefully we enjoyed that part of the show. Also wanted to say thank you to Ted and Marcia Everingham for coming aboard and talking with us a little bit about Ted's award from U.S. Sailing, which is well deserved, and all the other things that go with just a really fun couple to be around. So we hope you enjoyed this show. Don't forget, if you're looking for junior sailing registration or adult learn to sail, check out the information that was earlier in the show, and we'll see you soon.